Hello and very warm welcome from my side to our webinar. My name is Eliel Malgo and I'm your host for the upcoming 45 minutes or so. We are very excited to take you on a journey and show you how you can get more out of your contract management. Perhaps a quick word about the housekeeping in this webinar. All the participants are on mute, but you can ask questions anytime just by clicking on the question mark below at your right-hand side. If the question really fits into what we're currently talking about, or better, what Jim then is talking about, I'll be asking it right away. Otherwise, we will have some time left at the end of the webinar. Hopefully, we'll have some time left for a Q&A session and answer your questions there. So let's start with a short introduction about ArcPlace, who we are, and also why we choose to partner with Agiloft for the topic of contract management. ArcPlace was founded in 2006 by Robert Spearings, who is still owner and our CEO of the company. We started with digital archiving solutions, hence the name ArcPlace, the place to archive. But already 1 year or so after founding the company, first customers asked for more than just digital archives. They wanted to digitize their business processes end to end. So we grew our portfolio and also our expertise over the years, and now we are specialized in document management and archiving. However, of course, not only our expertise and portfolio grew, but our customer base, our number of employees and offices as well, as you can see on this slide. So today we are proud to have served over 900 customers. We have a little bit more than 100 employees, and we have offices in Zurich, Lausanne, and Gladbruch. To explain how exactly we are serving our customers, I find this picture very striking. Our founder and CEO, Robert Spearings, told me once that when he started the company in 2006, everyone was already talking about the paperless office. And yet, here we are today in 2023 in a post-pandemic world, and we're still talking with people in large organizations who are complaining about too much paper floating around the company. And so our goal at ArcPlace is to help these organizations to get rid of the paper, digitize those processes end to end, and enable them to achieve a very high level of automation within all their document-driven processes. We're doing this by starting at the beginning, of course, and this is with their input management. No matter if the input is still really paper, so paper-based, or it's already some form of digital like email, PDF, or also web forms, the aim is always to extract the information and deliver it right into the target system to the right employee. After that, then a workflow will be triggered most of the time. Here we want to achieve a very high level of automation through the help of AI and also through improving the existing business processes. And last but not least, of course, as we have the name ArcPlace, we still help our customers to digitally archive all relevant documents and data, and that also in a compliant way. And as said, everything is powered by AI. To sum this up in just one sentence, this is our ArcPlace goals. We digitize and automate your document-driven workflows to maximize efficiency and quality. So, as previously mentioned, we have a portfolio of solutions to meet the need of our customers, depending what the customer needs, what systems he already has, etc. So on the one hand, we have platforms which can serve a very broad range of topics and use cases within a company. And on the other hand, we have point solutions, which are more tailored to one specific topic, as for example, we're talking today about contract management. And here now we come full circle and see how Agiloft fits beautifully into our portfolio as one of these point solutions. As Agiloft is a leader in Gartner's Magic Quadrant and also a no-code solution, which is very important for us when we take solutions into our portfolio, we had found really the perfect solution for contract management purposes for our customers. So this was a really quick intro into ArcPlace and how Agiloft fits into our portfolio. And now, before I hand over to Jim for the main course of this webinar, you as the live audience who are live now in this webinar will have the advantage to slightly influence on what points Jim will focus on, depending on how you answer to our polls we have prepared. So we have prepared 2 polls to see who our live audience is. And I will now quickly share the first one. So here it comes. You should see it now on the screen. So the question is, what is the best description of your current role with respect to contract management? Are you more working in legal compliance? Are you more from the purchase, procurement, finance side? More sales and marketing? Or are you perhaps an external consultant? Or are you even a competitor who could also be in the webinar, of course? So we're having a look at the votes, and I give perhaps 30 more seconds for everyone. Yep, now I don't see the votes anymore, but I will quickly publish the second poll, which is a follow-up on that. So how are you currently working with contracts? Is it completely paper-based? Is it a mix of digital and paper-based? Is it digital but not very structured, so mix of emailing contracts back and forth and perhaps a digital archive? Or do you really have one digital system for the whole contract lifecycle, or several digital systems for the whole contract lifecycle? So now again, I see the votes who are coming in. Let's give you a little bit more time. So 75% are a mix of digital and paper-based, as it seems. And one has really a digital system for the whole contract lifecycle. Okay, we'll leave it at that. And then I'm excited to introduce you to Jim Leason. I already mentioned him. He's Managing Director EMEA at Agiloft. He will now take us on a journey and explain how organizations can get more out of their contract management. Please, Jim, the stage is yours.
Apologies. Thanks, Eliel, and thanks for the introduction. So my name's Jim Leason. I'm the Managing Director of EMEA in Agiloft. A little bit of background about me and then a bit of background about Agiloft. So I originally started my career as a lawyer, working in law firms, and then I moved into a corporate legal role to join the Thomson Reuters business, and became chief counsel of one of their business units, managing a team of lawyers, negotiating contracts, suffering quite a lot of the, I guess, the pain points that I'm going to be talking about today that we often find with customers using sort of relatively manual processes for contracting. I decided then that I'd move out of that career and see if I could go and support the Thomson Reuters legal business in coming up with products and solutions that could help solve some of these pain points for lawyers. I did that for the last 7 or 8 years before joining Agiloft last year to help grow the Agiloft business in EMEA. Agiloft is a leading contract lifecycle management solution, and we'll come on in a bit to just explain what we mean by contract lifecycle management. And I'm delighted to be working with ArcPlace, looking to support customers in the Swiss and the DACH region. So, okay, so if you're here today because you're curious about this topic of contract lifecycle management, hopefully it's warming to know that you're not the only one who's looking for CLM systems right now. CLM has been one of the top subjects that people search the Gartner advisory business for. It's reckoned that most organizations right now do not have an enterprise contract lifecycle management system. But we also think that in the next 5 years, a lot of those organizations will have moved to having what we call an enterprise contract lifecycle management system. So what do we mean by this term contract lifecycle management? For me, it's a process that starts with the point that somebody requests a contract and then ends, importantly, or perhaps doesn't end, but is a continuing process once the contract is signed into managing the obligations of contracts. It's not just about, for instance, the e-signature process. And I think when you look at those statistics from Gartner around how many people have adopted enterprise CLM, I think we see a lot of customers that have adopted e-signature, perhaps using Adobe Sign or DocuSign, but many fewer customers have really taken on board how to manage contracting from the point that contracts are requested to the point that contracts are being managed in a system. So let's just quickly step through some of these phases of contract lifecycle. So as I say, at the start, you get the contract request process, and the state of the art for CLM systems would enable you to have a front door, if you like, a portal that you could publish into your organization that enables the whole organization to submit requests for different contract types. It's also possible to integrate the CLM system that you buy with your CRM system, perhaps Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics, so that the salespeople working in the CRM system or the business development people working in those systems are able to submit their requests for contracts straight from that system, and often taking much of the data from an opportunity record in a CRM and pushing it into the CLM to then start the contracting process. You then move into the review and authoring process. And again, a contract lifecycle management system should be able to enable you to set up templates in the system that that are approved documents for your organization and for your business purposes. And the system, taking the data that you've captured from the request, will create that first draft document automatically, making it a much more efficient way to create contracts. Also enabling you to then perhaps send out that document directly to the other side, the counterparty. Contract lifecycle management systems also help you with negotiations, with a clause library, and perhaps enable you to manage playbooks for negotiations, where if your starting position is not accepted, perhaps you have a playbook of alternative provisions that you're willing to accept, rather than perhaps accept the other side's clause. Then we move into approvals, and increasingly in a more SOX-controlled world, a lot of organizations are looking to impose much more governance and structure around the way that contracts are established. And perhaps also to identify areas of contracting where perhaps no governance or approvals are required. So there's no ambiguity anymore as to when you need to involve the legal team and when you don't need to involve the legal team. And perhaps you set a threshold at a value limit that says below this level, we're not going to we're not going to negotiate. We're just going to allow you to sign these documents because it's low risk to the organization. And all of these rules and business rules can be established in a CLM system like Agiloft. Once you move beyond signature, as I said, CLM systems should enable you to have much more visibility and transparency over what's in your contract portfolio, so that you can do more analysis, perhaps to understand, in this current cost of living situation, what exposure you have to price increase provisions that allow suppliers to increase pricing either beyond inflation, or perhaps where you've successfully managed in the past caps on price increases. But also to enable you to set up alerts in your system, so that you don't miss important deadlines that might, for instance, enable you to terminate contracts and get out of contracts that are expensive, or perhaps that enable you to, if in a customer environment, enable you not to miss deadlines where you have the opportunity to raise prices. And then, as I say, in that obligation management aspect, beyond contract signature, we see a lot of organizations now wanting to manage more and more of the contract obligations in their contracts, so that these documents don't just get filed away in a drawer and forgotten about, that you're proactively managing not just the obligations that you've committed to as an organization, but also proactively managing your counterparties to the obligations they've committed to you on. Why is this important? Well, contracts sit right at the heart of several core processes within your enterprise. Whether it's a sales process, once you get beyond the proposal phase, you then move into a contracting phase with your customer before the order that's been signed moves into revenue management. And you need to understand, what you've signed up to in terms of your commitments to the customer, when you've got the ability to raise prices, when perhaps termination dates occur, etc. Similarly, in a procurement world, once you move beyond that sourcing event where you've had your tender process, the request to start the contracting process with your supplier that you've chosen before moving into a supplier management phase. So contracts sit right at the heart of many of these processes, and that's why this concept of enterprise contract lifecycle management is important, because what you're looking for is having a system that sits there managing all of your contracts, and perhaps being integrated with some of the systems that manage these other processes, whether it's the CRM system in the sales environment, whether it's your procure to pay systems in the procurement environment, or perhaps the ERP systems in the finance environment. So as you're thinking about why you might need a CLM system, and perhaps you're here because you do have some of these pain points, we typically see customers coming to Agiloft expressing varying different pain points across lots of different functions. And CLM systems can help many of these problems. So typically in the legal world, lawyers have perhaps lost a bit of control over the work they're doing, and perhaps they're wasting some of their time spending too much time on low value, low risk matters, and not enough time on the more strategic, higher value contracts. They might have backlogs of contract reviews that they're not able to get to, and it may be that across a legal team, without any consistency around the clause library or playbooks, what's happening is that the organization is starting to introduce into their contract portfolio an inconsistency in the way that they accept obligations, manage risk, and that creates complexity over time within an organization. Within the sales environment, often the challenge for salespeople is they find that the contracting process is slow. They have to constantly chase the contract managers or the legal managers for updates on where they are with contract reviews, that this process takes long and perhaps is disruptive to the relationship that they're trying to build. And in the worst case, it may be that you're actually losing sales because perhaps the contract you have is too onerous, and the parties that you're working with are not willing to accept and sign up to those terms. From a finance perspective, often the challenge is around transparency and really often being surprised by things, committed obligations or spend commitments, or perhaps customers having the right to terminate which they just weren't aware of and hadn't anticipated in their financial reporting. They have no clear view of obligations. They have poor compliance across the organization, which is leading to revenue leakage, perhaps to cost leakage and unnecessary risks. Procurement have many of the same challenges, but they often are challenged by not being able to manage suppliers in the right way, not being able to exercise the remedies that they have in their contracts because they're just not aware of missed deadlines. And no view of the complete supplier relationship. Often, a challenge we often hear is that, without a single repository of contracts, we just miss across an organization, particularly in organizations operating globally, the fact that there's already existing contracts in place with a particular supplier, and at the worst case that they have missed the opportunity to build up spend discounts under those sorts of arrangements. And then from an IT perspective, while the IT department probably on its own doesn't have specific challenges around contracting, other than the normal things that everyone in the business is experiencing, in terms of implementing new solutions, the IT department are challenged with limited resources, the challenge of integrating technology across the enterprise and bringing in a new CLM system, challenging that. Concerns about cybersecurity and data protection, and particularly managing contracts in a system, concerns around the confidentiality of those things. So how does a CLM hopefully address some of these pain points? Well, from a legal perspective, you remember that their concerns were mostly around the workload, managing inconsistent obligations and risk. And what a CLM system does is suddenly provide much more transparency and visibility of the workload of the people working in that team, which enables managers to have dashboards to understand the status of particular negotiations, to understand the workload of particular lawyers. And the sort of more advanced of the legal operations people are looking at also like the experience that different lawyers are getting on their contract negotiations to make sure that all lawyers are getting the experience they need, and to start showing how they can develop and improve the lawyers overall. Similarly, a CLM system can offer self-service tools to the business to enable them to take care of low-value, high-volume contracts and enable them to self-generate and then execute those things. We can manage approved templates and clause libraries so that you've got a library of alternative provisions. These days, most CLM systems like Agiloft has AI tools that support the contract review process, and they extract some of the data and some of the obligations and clauses out of contracts to then make sure that these things are better tracked in the system, but also supporting the negotiation process. The consequence of all of this is that you get to having better contracts, faster review cycles, which improves the life of sales and hopefully accelerates time to value. From a finance perspective, suddenly you're able to track the obligations, you're able to manage alerts, people stop missing stuff. You can introduce much more commercial governance into the business with some confidence that the system will manage these things for you through automated workflows and approvals. The procurement team can suddenly start, as I say, managing obligations. They have the same experience in terms of better contracting and faster review cycles. They suddenly have more information around the suppliers across their business, and they can better manage the supply chain compliance. From an IT perspective, if you're selecting a CLM system that's a no-code and fully configurable system like Agiloft, then really, in terms of that challenge around resources, you're not really putting a burden on the IT team to be managing a whole bunch of customized development changes that have been made to a system that are hard to maintain and makes the system difficult to upgrade. We offer complete training to admins to take ownership of configuration of the system. And we don't customize the solution. So when we bring out new releases, they go automatically into the solution without a burden on the IT team. We have standard connectors to many of the enterprise applications that organizations work with, which are managed by us and by our partners. And so, again, making the integrations a lot easier. And all of this is managed within an environment that's certified to industry security standards. Okay, so once you've decided that you're going to move to a CLM system, it's worth bearing in mind that CLM is a process of continual improvement. When you start out adopting a piece of technology like a contract lifecycle management system, you can start at the very early stages of this maturity spectrum, perhaps starting with just a searchable contract repository, getting all of those contracts into one place, just enabling everybody to have one place they can go to find contracts with confidence. At that point, you can then start to look at perhaps what workflows you want to put in place. You may want to start adopting some templates and standardizing some of the contracts and clauses you're using. And that starts to improve the consistency of obligations you're signing up to and the consistency of risk that you're taking on. Then you can start to look into the integrations that may be needed to make sure that the contracts system is connected to many of the other systems that you're working with in that sort of star shape that we looked at earlier. Then you can move into perhaps analyzing what all of this information is telling you about your commercial operations. And then with AI, start optimizing some of the things that you want to achieve. So there is this cycle of continual improvement, and many of these CLM systems, including Agiloft, allow you to step in perhaps with a lower functional system to start with, but also then enable you to then build and increase the functionality and the value that you get from it. I've got a quick slide here just to talk about the return on investment, because of course these things are always really important when it comes to the business case you need to build to acquire a system like a contract lifecycle management system. And the benchmarks are strong in terms of return on investment. Goldman Sachs estimates that you would deliver 20% operational efficiencies through the use of the CLM system. So these efficiencies are gained in the cost to everybody of managing contracts through a contracting process to moving into a CLM environment. And once you start measuring up, like how many people are involved in contracting, the cost of that legal team, the time it takes to manage approvals within your organization, that's quite a big chunk of return on investment that you can bank in your business case. The Hackett Group in the purchasing world estimates that with a CLM system managing your obligations better, where you're able to manage your spend, not miss those opportunities to terminate or renegotiate contracts, you can drive up to 10 to 12% of improvement in your total spend. Similarly, in the sales operations world, the World Commerce and Contracting, or previously IACCM, estimates that there's an improvement in sales and revenue leakage of 9.2%, just through managing your customers to the contract that you've committed to and not missing those opportunities to drive price increases, to drive change requests where perhaps scope creeps, and all of the other opportunities that where you're starting to extend with your relationship with your customer beyond what you originally committed to. And then there's some other, I guess, benefits around the management of security in contracts that come from starting to manage this in a secure environment within a CLM system, and compliance in terms of not missing important regulatory obligations that you have, or having the ability to be able to transparently provide information to a regulator around your state of compliance. And as we look at the ESG world, you're going to see a lot more, I think, obligations from new regulations coming out that require organizations to transparently report on their compliance with with obligations around climate change, modern day slavery, the ability to pay small to medium sized enterprises on time, all of these sorts of things. And that's going to make tracking this in contracts very important. Okay, so before I end, I thought I'd just touch on 3 important areas to consider as you're thinking about your new CLM system. So the first thing is really around configurability. One of our larger customers who sits on our advisory board said, you only know you bought the right CLM system when you're 3 years in. Okay, so what did he mean? He meant that when you originally buy a CLM system, you ask the vendor to build a solution that meets your needs on the day that you buy that system. It's hard to really anticipate what's going to happen in 2 to 3 years' time. But of course, every organization changes, the regulatory environment changes. Change is one of these certainties that you're going to have to adapt to and accommodate in the future. And what he meant was you need a CLM system that's not just been developed for the solution that you asked the vendor to deliver to you in that initial project. You need what you really need is a CLM system that can accommodate that first project, but then is also easy to adapt and evolve and to drive new processes and changes every year, every quarter, as the business and regulatory environment changes. And that may be, the organization going through a new acquisition and reorganizing. It may be, as I say, a new reporting or transparency requirement coming in from the EU, perhaps, that's driving the need to report on new pieces of information in your supply chain. And so you only know really whether you bought the right product when you're down the line and you've got a system that's easy to change, that can accommodate and be flexible to the needs of your business. And Agiloft is a really, really configurable through no code, through the interface solution. The next thing I wanted to say is to not overlook the importance of templates and the clause library. There's a good book that I recommend to people, written by Alex Hamilton of Radiant Law. He talks about the fact that it's rational to be reasonable. And what he means is, and the message he gives in the book is that you can implement technology to make your processes more efficient. But ultimately, what's a significant driver in contracting processes to the efficiency and that speed to contracting is the reasonableness of your contract terms. If you put out to your counterparties contract terms which are one-sided, unreasonable, and therefore are always going to be rejected by the people that you're contracting with, you're always going to be tied up in lengthy negotiations. What you really need to be doing, I think, is driving towards having contracts which are a reasonable allocation of risk between yourself and the counterparty, which counterparties that will accept. So how do you get to that place? What I'm showing here is a dashboard that Agiloft has in its system of the clause library. And what we enable customers to do is to track every clause that gets negotiated, and then to provide reports to you that show you in these bar graphs, like which are the clauses that are regularly getting negotiated by counterparties. And that enables you to then look at those clauses, look at the variations that you've accepted, and perhaps move to a provision that's more acceptable. And if you continually do this over each quarter, continually look at your clause library, continually make changes to your templates so that you're driving towards a starting point that's more readily acceptable, you will find that alone shortens those contract negotiation cycle times, and that then helps the business drive value much quicker, whether it's in the sales process and getting business onboarded quicker, or whether it's in the sourcing world which perhaps may mean that you're able to source whatever it is that you need to buy much quicker than your competitors, and to get to market with something that's much faster. And then finally, I'd also encourage you to look for a CLM system that's able to extend beyond the core contract lifecycle management process. The reason for that is that often there are adjacent processes to contracting which do require, some specific process or perhaps some lookup of data. And often there isn't an answer or a solution in your existing environment that actually helps you manage that specific process. And what you really need is then a CLM system that can extend to deliver either that lookup data or that process that you want to manage. So for instance, we have customers that are looking to us in Agiloft to help them manage their powers of attorney or their delegations of authority, and we can create additional tables in our solution that enable you to have that list of people who are authorized and manage how much they're authorized to contract on. And then when it comes to the contracting process, the CLM system easily manages the governance of all of that within the process. Similarly, around legal entities, for instance, and managing transfer pricing arrangements to make sure that there's the correct allocation of revenue and cost within an organization's group structure. In the sourcing world, we're seeing more sourcing and procurement customers coming to us looking for the contract lifecycle management system to manage the sort of price list that's been agreed with a customer and to push that pricing into their sourcing system. And as changes get agreed in the contract with the supplier, those changes get adjusted in the agreed price list and then pushed out confidently into the sourcing system. So the contract lifecycle management system becomes that system of record for the price list. That they're assured is the agreed price list in the contract. So as I finish up, I just want to summarize, I guess, the lessons here. So contract lifecycle management it's an enterprise process. It requires an enterprise system. It's a system that delivers value across multiple functions: finance, procurement, sales, and legal. It's a system that you need to be configurable and adaptable because your organization will change and your processes will change and the regulatory environment will change, and you need a system that you can easily manage and change for yourselves. And then finally, as I say, it's a system that also may need to manage some adjacent processes that are needed connected to the contracting process. So on that note, I just want to say thank you and open this up to any questions.
Thank you very much, Jim, for these practical insights. So we have now some time for Q&A. Please ask your questions below at the right-hand side when you click on questions. I'll quickly look if we already have some. Yes, here we go. First question for you, Jim, would be, we're currently just storing our contracts digital in a DMS. What would be the best next step for us to get a quick win with a small budget?
So quick win on a small budget. I mean, you can set up your CLM system to capture all of those documents. When you bring documents into a CLM system like Agiloft, we have an OCR process that runs on all of those documents, which makes all of the documents searchable across your contract portfolio. We create new contract records for each of the documents that you bring in. So a quick win would be to bring it into the CLM system. You would then have the search capability across them in our Agiloft system, and then you can start over a period of time, start managing a process where you start to look either using our AI tools or you can do it manually. Start looking at building out more metadata in your contract records that those documents are connected with, so that you get more visibility and you can drive more processes off that metadata. So that may enable you to, for instance, initially capture the expiry dates and the the provisions around contract termination, so that you have got some confidence that you've got visibility on when these contracts are in force and when they're going to come up for renewal. So I think that's probably the quick win and the way to step into this.
Very good, thanks. So second question I have here for you is how well does Agiloft integrate into existing applications? I think you mentioned it's in your presentation as well, but perhaps you can elaborate a little bit more on this topic.
Yeah, so Agiloft is a really connected system, and we have two/3 limbs to that connected experience strategy. So the first thing we do, and we really passionately believe in enabling users to work in the tools that they're working in, because it's, you know, all of these sort of digital transformation projects involve people changing the way they work in some way, and enabling them to change the way they work within tools that they're familiar with, rather than asking them to move to a new system, is helpful to support business change. So firstly, we have, you know, connectors that we manage in Salesforce, in Microsoft Dynamics, which, as I said, enable salespeople to manage their contracts and request contracts from within the interface that they're already working within. We have connectors in the Microsoft Productivity Suite, in Google Workspace, which enable you to draft contracts from within Word or Google Docs, that enable you to file and store all of your documents from those applications into the Agiloft CLM system, so that users aren't having to constantly go to the Agiloft CLM system to upload and download documents. The next part of our strategy is one around integration platforms as a service, where we've built out connectors with 3 middleware solutions: Workato, Boomi, and MuleSoft, which really enable those middleware solutions to manage the integrations easily with your ERP systems, SAP, Oracle, etc., or other tools like ServiceNow, Jira, and many of the enterprise applications that you're working with. And you can easily build workflows and data transfers between Agiloft and those tools, or from those tools into Agiloft as you need. So we have a strong integration framework.
Very good, thank you. Then I have a last question, at least for a moment, if no other question is coming in. That would be, I understood that we have room for improvement within our contract management. Do you also help to build a business case with ROI calculation?
Yes, we do. We have we have some tools. We have a calculator. We have some supporting slides that help our customers, if they need it, build that business case. And I've shown in this presentation some of the industry benchmarks that are available that can support perhaps that ROI calculation process. But often it's about also supporting customers with understanding what their current process is, helping them understand perhaps what they're aiming for in terms of their to-be processes, whether that's the initial phase or whether that's the sort of end phase of a project, and then helping them understand like what benefits they can expect to deliver in that phased approach of implementation, and that gives that support of the business case.
Great. Thank you very much, Jim, for answering these questions. We have no more questions in a moment, and the time is already up. So we're at the end of our webinar. And what I would like to add perhaps is the following. If you feel like this webinar showed you that you really can get more out of your contract management at your organization, but you don't really know where to start, and also find it difficult to assess how mature your organization really is when it comes to CLM or contract management, we, of course, Agiloft and ArcPlus, will be very happy to help you. And what we often do as a first step is an assessment call to analyze where your company stands today. And after that call, you'll get an overview from us of your current situation. And furthermore, we'll also give you a concise plan on how we would recommend you to proceed to, yeah, like we heard it in the questions, get a quick win. Don't have to invest too much from the start, and also we can help then with the ROI calculation. So if you'd like to do that assessment call with us, you can simply reply to the email with the recording you will get from us right after the webinar. Just reply that you would be interested in an assessment call, and we'll contact you and set this up. So finally, I want to thank you all for signing up for this webinar, joining this webinar. Also, if you rewatch this webinar afterwards, thank you very much for your interest. We're looking forward to see you again in one of our next webinars. Thank you also, Jim, once again for your insightful information you gave us. And I wish you all the best and have a really good day. Bye bye.
Thanks, Daniel.